This episode is going to be about, can we learn how to get this fuel line bled?
If at first you don't succeed, try again.
For those of you who have been following along with us, remember we broke down in the middle of the bay because our diesel engine overheated. The reason it overheated was because the impeller failed and the engine, which is water-cooled, could not cool down. Episode 73 and episode 74, Rescued and Fixing Our Engine, describes what we had to do to fix the engine once we were towed back. First we had to extract all the little rubber, we call them gibbets, all the little rubber pieces out of the water line. We took them out and then we had to reassemble the water line. I cleaned the water exchanger, if you remember, and replaced the impeller. Also, I had to repair and replace the fuel line for insurance purposes, and we had to change the fuel filter for the first time. We really have been working on the engine, replacing the coolant as well, and also looking into the water lift muffler and to make sure that everything is the way it should be on our engine. Now, whenever you change fuel filters or remove a fuel line, you have to then bleed the engine because air gets in the fuel line, and in our last video we described the process. However, we were unsuccessful in bleeding the fuel line, so now we're back to it. To get the air out of a fuel line, all you have to do is pump the fuel through, either through a mechanical pump or an electric pump, and you open and unscrew certain points. These points are basically little bolts that you unscrew, and you keep pumping until there's no air bubbles coming out anymore, as you see, and then only what starts leaking out is the fuel. Many times, the only points you have to bleed are bolts on top of the fuel filter and maybe one or two, but sometimes you have to bleed the fuel injectors themselves. And that was really a little overwhelming for me, someone who has no experience. I recently had a diesel mechanic come on board and take a look at my diesel engine. First time I've ever had a professional mechanic take a look at it. And he really was great, gave me a lot of great information, and I learned a lot from him. And I was very relieved to see that our engine really is a good engine. It's not very modern or high-tech, but it is a good, reliable engine. It just has not been maintained at all. Now that we are learning how to maintain it and keep it maintained, we are anticipating getting great service from this old diesel engine. Okay, and the other thing, show me those bleeding points again. We got the one.
This one right here.
Right.
You don't have to do this one. This is the highest point, pretty out there. Then the injection pump, you got one here, and you got one over here.
Okay.
And that's, again, without cranking the engine over, just hand pump it.
Okay, that's very helpful. Appreciate it. Okay, hi, we're down here back by the engine. I'm going to pump the manual fuel lift pump while Amy bleeds the fuel filter and what's called a banjo. What's that called? Banjo what? Banjo screwing? We don't know. Banjo something. Anyway, and then we're going to try cranking it again, starting the engine again. If it doesn't work that time, then we're going to have to bleed the fuel injectors. So let's check it out. Tell me when.
first you don't succeed, try again. And so first 2 attempts at bleeding the engine have not been successful, so we're going to bleed it again.
Okay, this is the 3rd time that we're going to try turning over the engine after we bled the engine. This is the 3rd time, so let's give it a try. Hopefully 3 times the charm.
Joy to the
Hey, Lauren.
world,
Oh my gosh.
the Lord is come. Let earth receive.
So we're getting help from my friend Lauren, who watched our channel, and he's got a boat here nearby in another marina next door, and so we're really fortunate to have him come over and help us bleed the fuel injectors. Amy and I were able to bleed the line up to the fuel injectors, but he's shown us how to do it, so it's really great. All right, Lauren, why don't you tell us what you're doing with the different injectors?
Yeah, so we're just cracking the each of the 4 injectors loose. So as we go down the line, I'm just quickly opening it up just enough to get a little drip out of there, so we don't make a big mess. And as soon as you see a little bit of fuel start pulsing coming out a little bit, I just go ahead and tighten it down. And as we turned it over up there, it's starting to catch. So we're obviously getting the air out of the system doing that.
Okay, great.
And so we're just going to do the last 2 injectors, and I think it's going to fire up.
Okay.
It may not be smooth right off the bat, but
Because it still has to go through cycles to get all of the...
yes,
Okay.
and so it'll run rough for 30 seconds, 40 seconds, and you'll hear it start clearing up and just starting to run.
Okay, great.
So
Well, you tell me when.
okay. When you crank it over, we'll just see it slowly drip out, and if you crack it a little too far, then more comes out, but it's more of just...
Not the same thing.
It just gets messier if you open it too far.
Okay.
And then that being the last point before your engine. Start at the front because at least we're running now.
Right.
So we obviously got some of the air out of it.
Okay.
So we see that there was no real mess or anything.
Right.
Yeah, so it's just if you crack them too much and it's running, then it's like, oh, there's going to be more. Let's go ahead and just start at the beginning again.
Good, we know that works.
So we're getting there.
It sounds like that. It's pretty smooth. Actually, when you have the throttle on, and it's supposed to be up around 5,000 RPMs, 5 or 6 is where it always is when it runs.
Right there?
Yeah.
Okay. There's not much any air in there.
Yeah,
You don't think it's just a little clunky?
not really.
Okay.
That's pretty much what it sounds like when it's running fine in
Now,
a
you see that you don't
idle.
need to take anything apart to do it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, if you run it for a little while or you go out for a motor and you feel like, I think it could be better, I mean, you could just crack it open
Right,
again.
right, okay. Yeah, I saw how you did that. That was really good.
Yeah. there's no reason why you can't have it running while you do it.
Right.
It's not going to suck air back in.
Right.
But when you crank it over with just the key and it not running, it's turning at a very lower RPM. So you're going to push less fuel out.
Right.
And stuff, so it would take longer.
Right. Yeah.
But your chances of making a mess while it's running are a little bit easier.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
all right. So that makes sense. And even just being able to see and listen how it changed when you opened and closed it, you know.
if it's running good and you're not consuming the oil and not smoking, a compression test will just tell you the miles on your engine. As your engine gets older and older and older, the piston rings and everything loosen up a little bit and your compression goes down. So is it going to tell you, oh, you need to replace your engine? I mean, if it's really low, you're going to lose some power, and if you're not blowing smoke out the back, it's like, okay, well,
Right.
Now, if it's a car, and when I was a kid, I used to do compression checks, and I have a compression gauge at home. I don't think anybody should charge you more than a few bucks to do it, because you pull in this case, you pull a glow plug out, you just screw it in, and it's a gauge, analog gauge, and you just crank your engine out 5-6 times, and you go, it's 200 psi, it's 250, it's 180. And so if yours is normally at 200 and it's down to 160, it's like, well, you're missing a little horsepower. Your engine's got some hours on it, but you're running and everything's good.
That's good.
But if you got like noises like knocking because you got loose piston rod or connecting rod and other things going on, then you might have an issue.
Right.
So I wouldn't worry about a compression check. Because if somebody says, "Oh, your compression is really low," like, well, you want to spend a few thousand to rebuild your motor, or is it running smooth, fine, and it's not smoking?
Right. Yeah.
I wouldn't see any benefit in doing it.
Now, how would you respond to our original survey said that we should pull the injectors out and send them to a shop to have the injectors recalibrated?
I wouldn't do that. This is not a max horsepower engine. So when I race my diesel trucks and one injector flows slightly different than the other, I'm spending 5,000 RPM and 600, 700 horsepower. Well, yeah, I'm after that every little ounce. It's not going to balance in the injectors unless they're way off. You know.
Okay.
Your injectors are mechanical. There's no adjustment to them.
Right.
So they can, if you have them, they could replace the nozzle tips in them or maybe they'll run some cleaners through. And usually, if you take them out and take them to a shop to balance them, I mean, it's really, they're just going to run some good solvent through them and clean them out. I've had injectors gum up and stuff on me before.
Right.
But
you'd be able to tell anyway because it's not running good.
It's not running good. I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, if they're off a little bit.
At this point, it's not going to affect how we're using the boat, how we're functioning with the boat. We're not racing the motor to race anywhere or do anything.
No, not at all.
So, yay, we got the engine running. Thank you, Lauren, for stopping by. It's always dangerous to stop by because then we might put you to work. So we got that running. The engine has new fuel lines, has new fuel filters. It has a new impeller. We cleared out all the old impeller bits. We got a new oil change again this time, and I think we're going to crank it over again, get it going, get it cleared out some more, and hopefully that's it with the engine for now. We've got that under our belts, so next it's turning to the battery system.